The day the CEO publicly humiliated the janitor was the day everyone in the lobby learned a lesson they would never forget. It started with a spilled cup of coffee. The marble floor of the corporate headquarters gleamed under bright lights when Mr. Carter, the powerful CEO, slipped and nearly fell. His eyes locked onto Daniel, a quiet, single dad who worked nights and early mornings to provide for his 7-year-old daughter. In front of executives, interns, and clients, the CEO's voice thundered. "You can't even do your job right. You're fired." The words echoed. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply nodded, apologizing softly, though everyone knew the spill wasn't his fault. What most people didn't know was that Daniel had rushed in late that morning because he had stayed up all night at the hospital with his sick daughter. As security escorted him out, whispers filled the lobby. Some employees looked down, ashamed they said nothing. Then came a sound no one expected. A helicopter hovered above the building, its blades slicing through the silence. Through the glass walls, everyone stared as it descended onto the rooftop landing pad reserved only for high-profile visitors. Minutes later, a sharply dressed woman stepped into the lobby asking for Daniel by name. The CEO's confident smirk slowly faded. Because sometimes, the person you underestimate is the one connected to something far greater than you could ever imagine, and sometimes, kindness carries a power that authority never will. The woman walked through the lobby with calm confidence, her heels clicking against the marble floor that Daniel had polished countless times. Every eye followed her. "I'm looking for Daniel Reyes," she said firmly. The CEO stepped forward, forcing a polite smile. "He no longer works here." Her expression didn't change. "That's unfortunate. Because I'm here on behalf of the board." A silence fell so heavy it felt like the air had been pulled from the room. Employees froze mid-step. Phones stopped ringing. Even security hesitated. The woman introduced herself as Ms. Whitmore, a senior partner representing the company's largest investor group. She explained that the board had been reviewing leadership conduct after several anonymous complaints about workplace culture. "And this morning," she added, glancing around the room, "we received a live report." Unbeknownst to the CEO, several employees had recorded the public humiliation and sent it directly to corporate oversight. But that wasn't the twist. Ms. Whitmore revealed something that made the CEO's face lose all color. Daniel wasn't just a janitor. Years ago, he had sold a small tech startup for a modest amount after his wife passed away. Instead of chasing wealth, he chose stability, a simple job with flexible hours so he could raise his daughter himself. Quietly, he had invested his remaining shares into the very firm that now owned majority control of this corporation. Daniel wasn't just an employee. He was a silent shareholder. And now, standing in that lobby, the board had questions, not for Daniel, but for the man who fired him. For the first time, the CEO understood something humbling. Power doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes, it pushes a cleaning cart. By the time Daniel reached the sidewalk outside, carrying a small box with his thermos and a photo of his daughter, he heard someone calling his name. "Mr. Reyes! Please wait!" He turned to see Ms. Whitmore approaching, her expression no longer corporate, but respectful. Behind her, through the towering glass windows, he could see the CEO standing frozen in the lobby. "Daniel," she said gently, "there's been a misunderstanding. The board would like to speak with you." Daniel shook his head slightly. "I don't want trouble. I just want to pick up my daughter from school on time." That answer alone told her everything she needed to know. Inside, the emergency board call was already underway. The recorded video of the humiliation had spread quickly among senior leadership. Executives from New York, London, and Toronto were watching. What disturbed them most wasn't just the firing, it was the tone. The cruelty. The applause from fear instead of respect. Ms. Whitmore explained to Daniel that his quiet investment portfolio, including shares inherited after selling his startup, made him a significant stakeholder. But Daniel's response surprised her. "I didn't invest to control anyone," he said. "I invested because I believed in building something stable, something my daughter could be proud of." Upstairs, the board reached a unanimous decision. Leadership isn't measured by authority, it's measured by character. Minutes later, the CEO was asked to step down pending a full review. When Daniel walked back into the lobby, the same employees who had watched silently before now stood a little straighter. Not because he was a shareholder, but because they realized something powerful. The quietest person in the room had just shown them what true leadership looks like. When Daniel stepped back into the lobby, it felt different. The same marble floors, the same towering windows, but the atmosphere had shifted. This time, people weren't staring at him with pity. They were watching with respect. The former CEO was no longer standing at the center of the room. His office upstairs was already being cleared. The board's decision had been swift. Public humiliation, toxic leadership, and years of quiet complaints had finally caught up with him. Ms. Whitmore addressed the employees calmly. "A company's greatest asset isn't its stock price," she said. "It's its people." Then she turned to Daniel. "The board would like to offer you a leadership advisory role. Flexible hours, full benefits, and the opportunity to help us rebuild the culture here." The room fell silent again. Daniel looked around, at the receptionists, the interns, the maintenance crew, the managers who once avoided eye contact. He thought about the long nights cleaning offices after everyone had gone home. He thought about his daughter drawing pictures at the kitchen table while he ironed his uniform. He could have chosen power, revenge, control. Instead, he chose something else. "I'll accept," he said softly, "on one condition." Everyone leaned in. "No one here should ever feel small for doing honest work." A few employees wiped their eyes. Others nodded, ashamed of their earlier silence but grateful for the second chance. Because in that moment, Daniel didn't just regain a job. He restored dignity to every person who had ever been overlooked. And sometimes, the strongest leader isn't the loudest voice in the room. It's the one who chooses grace when given the chance to strike back. Over the next few weeks, something remarkable happened inside those glass walls. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand speeches or flashy announcements. Instead, there were small, steady changes, the kind that quietly rebuild trust. Daniel kept his simple routine. Some mornings he still arrived early, greeting security by name. He visited every department, not to supervise but to listen. Interns felt heard. Assistants felt valued. Managers began leading with empathy instead of fear. The company introduced anonymous feedback forums, mentorship programs, and flexible schedules for working parents. The break room conversations shifted from anxiety to ideas. Productivity rose, not because people were pressured, but because they felt respected. One afternoon, Daniel's daughter visited the office. She held his hand proudly as he showed her the lobby where everything had changed. Employees smiled at her like family. "Is this where you work, Daddy?" she asked. He nodded. She looked around and whispered, "It feels happy here." And that was the real victory. Months later, the company's performance improved significantly across its offices in New York, London, and Toronto. But more importantly, so did its culture. Investors praised the turnaround, but employees knew the truth. The transformation didn't begin in the boardroom. It began with a man who refused to let humiliation turn into bitterness. Daniel never sought recognition. He never needed the helicopter, the titles, or the applause. He just wanted to raise his daughter with integrity. And in doing so, he reminded everyone of something simple but powerful. Kindness is not weakness. Dignity is not disposable. And true success is measured by how we treat the people who can offer us nothing in return.